It was the early morning hours of September 20th, 2015, when Fidel Lopez frantically called 911 from his apartment in Sunrise, Florida. His voice was panicked, almost incoherent, as he pleaded for help, saying his girlfriend, Maria Nemeth, was struggling to breathe. The call was placed at 3:39 a.m., and emergency responders rushed to the scene, where they found a gruesome and horrifying sight. Maria Nemeth, 31, was lying in a pool of her own blood on the bathroom floor. Despite the efforts of paramedics, she showed no signs of life and was pronounced dead at 4:02 a.m. The apartment itself told the story of a violent struggle. Blood spattered the walls, furniture was overturned, and the glass door of the balcony was shattered. The damage to the apartment was extensive, indicating that something terrible had unfolded in the hours leading up to Maria's death. Fidel, 24, was found nearby, standing in shock and smoking a cigarette. He had met Maria just over a year ago. She was originally from Peru and worked as a leasing manager at a local apartment complex, while Fidel was employed as a mechanic. The couple had recently moved into their new apartment together, hoping to start a fresh chapter in their relationship. However, what began as a hopeful new beginning turned into a nightmare. As detectives began their investigation, they quickly noted the signs of a brutal and violent altercation. The walls were dented, and there were multiple holes in the drywall, indicating that someone had punched through them in anger or frustration. Blood was found on various surfaces throughout the apartment, including the bedroom and the closet. But it was what they found in the bathroom that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Maria's body was badly mutilated. Pieces of her internal organs were found scattered throughout the closet. Initially, investigators thought that Maria might have suffered a miscarriage, but the truth was far more horrifying. Fidel Lopez, in a violent rage, had ripped out parts of her intestines during what he described as a sexual act gone horribly wrong. Fidel was taken into custody and brought to the Sunrise Police Department for questioning. During the interrogation, he was informed of his Miranda rights, and despite his limited English, he waived his right to an attorney and agreed to speak with detectives. His defense team would later try to argue that Fidel didn't fully understand his rights due to the language barrier, but the court ruled that he was well aware of the situation and had voluntarily cooperated with the investigation. Fidel, originally from Cuba, had moved to the US at the age of 16. He dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, but had managed to find work as a mechanic. As the interrogation began, Fidel initially claimed that the night had been a typical one. He and Maria had gone out for drinks, each consuming margaritas before returning to their apartment. They stopped to buy a bottle of tequila, which they shared while sitting on the floor, using cardboard boxes as makeshift tables, since they had not yet fully furnished their new home. Fidel described how the night escalated. After several drinks, Maria asked him to fulfill some of her intimate fantasies. According to Fidel, things became rough, but he insisted that everything they did was consensual. However, the details of what happened next were blurry for him. He was drunk, and his memory was hazy. What he could remember was that at some point during their intimacy, Maria mentioned her ex-husband's name in the heat of the moment. Fidel admitted that hearing the name of Maria's former partner enraged him. In a fit of jealousy, Fidel lost control. He described how he began assaulting Maria, using various objects he found around the apartment to violate her. The brutality of the attack was unimaginable. He tore at her body with his hands, causing fatal internal injuries. When he finally realized what he had done, Maria was no longer breathing. In a state of shock, Fidel trashed the apartment breaking the glass door and punching holes in the walls before stepping outside to smoke a cigarette. It was only after this that he called 911. During the interrogation, detectives pressed Fidel for details. At first, he denied having hurt Maria intentionally, but as the conversation went on, he broke down and confessed. He admitted that he had acted out of rage when Maria uttered her ex-husband's name, and in his blind jealousy, he had done the unthinkable. "I didn't want to kill her," Fidel sobbed. "I know I killed her, but I didn't mean to." Despite his confession, the case moved forward with the full weight of the law. Fidel Lopez was charged with first-degree murder and sexual battery. The evidence was overwhelming. Neighbors testified that they had heard screams and sounds of a violent argument coming from the apartment. The forensic examination confirmed that Maria had suffered severe internal injuries, and the crime scene told the story of a man who had completely lost control. In court, Fidel's defense team attempted to suppress his confession, arguing that his limited English prevented him from understanding his Miranda rights. However, the judge ruled that Fidel had demonstrated sufficient understanding of the English language to waive his rights. There was no question about his guilt. Fidel's brutal actions had cost Maria her life, and the evidence against him was undeniable. Faced with the prospect of the death penalty, Fidel accepted a plea deal. In exchange for avoiding the death sentence, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and sexual battery. On August 3, 2017, Fidel Lopez was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The plea agreement also ensured that Fidel could never appeal his sentence. The horrific events of that night left a lasting impact on both the families of Fidel and Maria. No amount of justice could undo the tragedy that had occurred. What had started as a seemingly ordinary night for a couple in love had ended in a brutal and senseless act of violence.